welcome to episode 13 of the Drama Llamas. I'm Doug Urbanski.
And I'm Stephen Jeffries, and I'm terrified of 13!
Not really, but I do find it interesting that this is the 13th episode. So...
What do you think that means?
I don't know. Maybe it means Dr. Knight will give us an F, maybe Coleman will catch on fire, maybe puppy dogs will explode and cover us with cute, disgusting gore. There are many things. Most likely nothing at all.
So today we're...
Today we're what?
Today we're...
Talking about a flash drive?
No, today we're talking about...
That was weird.
Yeah. Today we're talking about the three sections: obligatory scene, exposition, and dialogue. And of course we're going to start off with obligatory scene.
So, Doug, oblige me. Ha! See what I did there? What is an obligatory scene?
Well... Apparently, the scholar Lawson would have us believe it is the point where the premise of the play is proven. But Egri, he not so cool with that idea.
Egri not so cool with that? So
No,
Lawson
not so
claims
cool.
that there is an obligatory point that every play must build to, a scene that must be included.
Mhm.
But Egri's got some fighting words for him.
Egri, I believe, claims that there are several obligatory scenes in a play.
We could even read the little dialogue here.
Do you want to be the young lady?
Sure, I'll be the young lady.
Yeah.
So, this is a conversation between Egri and some theoretical young lady.
Yes, but why are you taking this roundabout way to our discussion of the obligatory scene?
Because all textbook writers seem to agree that the obligatory scene is the scene which a play must have. It is expected. It is the scene for which everyone is waiting, the scene which has been promised throughout and which cannot be eliminated. In other words, the play builds to an inevitable scene which will tower over all the others. There is such a scene in A Doll's House, when Helmer takes the letter out of the mailbox.
Don't you approve of it?
I don't approve of the concept because every scene in a play is obligatory. Do you understand why?
Why?
Because if Helmer hadn't been ill, Nora wouldn't have forged the signature. Krogstad would have had no excuse to come to the house demanding money. There would have been no complications. Krogstad never would have written the letter. Helmer never would have opened it. And...
What you say is true!
And that's where we're going to cut it, because despite the fact that I make a beautiful bearded lady, that pretty much sums up the point. That was kind of fun. I think you should be the lady next time.
I don't have a young lady voice.
I don't believe that for a moment. But there's an interesting point to be had there that Egri brings up, that every scene in a play must be obligatory.
Yeah.
And I bet we can count like at least 7 other concepts that Egri's covered for us in which that same idea is played out. The things must be linked. The things must drive one another forward. I mean, what, like point of attack, the climax conflict resolution.
We could think back to that
like-
example that you gave in 1 or 2 episodes ago about, the guy waking up in the morning. I believe you went through a whole thing where the guy wakes up in the morning, he overslept. I'm doing a terrible job of remembering what all you were talking about. But, it's just these small little details.
Right. I'm going to pretend I understood exactly where you were going with that.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
But that's okay. Point being that Egri, again, he's tying together these concepts that he's shown to show to us that, in a play, you shouldn't have fluff. There shouldn't be any of these extra little details.
Well, that's what I was getting at, was the whole description you were talking about with the guy waking up in the morning and da-da-da-da-da.
Mhm.
It was all fluff.
Oh, yeah.
There was
okay,
no
I got you.
real
Yeah, it
obligatory
was someone
scene.
like describing in a story they wrote, like starting your story with the guy waking up, and that's a terrible way to start a story. 9 times out of 10, unless you have a really, really killer way to describe that, or maybe he wakes up in the Sahara Desert naked with a horse on his head. That would be interesting.
Wait, what?
So, I don't know. With that, let's move on to exposition.
Next up, we have...
Good dog. I'm not even sure I know what this is. Like a pencil holder? That's freaking weird. I don't know. Nice shot. Anyway, exposition.
Yes. I will admit at first I was a little unclear exactly what he meant by exposition, but we talked about it a little bit, and it sounds like, you know, exposition is essentially that point in which, or points in a play where a character exposes something about themselves.
Oh, that sounds dirty. But you're right, yeah, exposition. Even though, you know, I tend to think of dialogue when I think of exposition, you know, because I think of it as, from the angle of writing a story. When you're being expository, you're just sort of blah, kind of barfing information. Sometimes exposition works, a lot of times it can be overdone. But yeah, I thought Agri made a really good point when, you know, he said that exposition itself, page 251, is part of the whole play, and not simply a fixture to be used at the beginning and then discarded. Yet textbooks on writing deal with exposition as if it were a separate element in dramatic composition. And we see that so often in stories. And in fact, your example of the sleeping man kind of, you know, works with that too. You know, let's start the story off by just throwing word vomit at you until you understand what's going on, and then, well, now that you've settled into the context of the story, which you haven't because we've all shoved it in your face, let's pretend, you know, and I think a lot of times that's why a story can begin on page 2. Yeah. So, I thought it was really interesting, you know, he uses the dollhouse example about how Nora exposes herself through conflict as a naive, spoiled child. She doesn't, you know, Helmer doesn't come on and just say, "You're a naive, spoiled child." I mean, we get that from the way that she interacts with him, so we never have to have anything overt said to tell us that, you know? So, what did you think about that, you know, beyond the standard ways people think about exposition?
I guess I thought more about just how it comes through in like actions and stuff. I guess the Nora example is pretty good, but like
it was my example. I thought.
I mean,
pretty proud of that.
Well,
I didn't come up with.
I think back to have you seen The Usual Suspects?
I've not, so that's gonna fly right past me.
Well, I didn't want to spoil it for you, but the movie has been out for like 15 years.
Go ahead, spoil away.
At the end of the movie, we find out that Kevin Spacey's character, Verbal Kint, I believe his character's name is actually criminal mastermind Kaiser Sose. And we find this out after a bit of like exposition, like flashback exposition, like, you know, he's the one that basically kills off everybody up until the last guy played by Gabriel Byrne. I don't remember his character's name. But what's interesting is that they do add this little bit of like action exposition, where as the cops haven't figured out that it was him. They think he was just kind of like basically he was just brought in for questioning. But we see him walk away, and throughout the movie we see his character has this like really bad limp, and he's a stutterer. But as we see him walking away from the police station, his posture straightens up, and he's walking.
So it's all an act.
Yeah, it's like a huge act. So it's kind of like an example of like exposition without words, I guess. But it's a lot easier to do in a film, I think.
Yeah,
because
I think so too.
You're able to focus on things. But I think it's still.
Although sometimes you use dialogue.
So the last
Really? Doug, I thought you said we weren't going to do anything weird. What is that? It's a cup.
That's your cup.
Is that this says McMurphy on it. That is my name is not that is my nickname.
That's your nickname.
That is my nickname. It is McMurphy. So, but a cup? Really? Come on! Give me something more interesting. So, okay, we get it. It's 13. Things are falling from the sky. What is that? Is that a crow?
It's like a cheaply made raven.
It's a poorly made plastic raven. It seems to be the transitions that do that. Huh. I'm gonna try something.
Shit.
If no more magical things are gonna fall from the sky, dialogue. For real. Yeah, go.
Right. Well, dialogue. He's got some important things to say about dialogue. I essentially said nothing right there, but
which was a poor use of dialogue.
Trying to find a transition into talking.
You're just leading us by example,
That's
what
right.
not to say. They use Shakespeare as an example. You talked about that before we started shooting.
On 259, he brings up Shakespeare has an example. He talks about how his sentences and his philosophical passages are weighty and measured. In his love scenes, lines are lyrical and flow easily. Then, with the mounting of action, sentences become shorter and simpler, so that not only the sentence content, but the word and syllable content vary with the development of the play. So definitely, like dialogue, not even the actual words, but the way they are presented to us, like just the way they're kind of distributed, are a reflection of the tone of the play and in the different parts.
Yeah, that's a good way to word it. Earlier on, he quotes from actually a student essay in this chapter. Only a rising conflict will produce healthy dialogue. We have all experienced the long, dull period where characters sit about on the stage talking endlessly, trying to fill the space between one conflict and the next. If the author provided the necessary transition, there would have been no need for this bridge of chit-chat, where he essentially talks about, you had mentioned that characters, the dialogue reflects what's actually happening, and I think it's really neat how Egri talks about the ways that dialogue can reflect what's going on.
Well, I guess technically, Miss Jean Michael
tells us this. Yes,
but I think you had mentioned something else about dialogue. There's one of the things about the different things that dialogue reveals. Like, first, dialogue must reveal character. Dialogue must reveal background. Dialogue in a way is sort of like the exposition of the previous chapter.
Yeah, exposition and dialogue can be one and the same. Right. I mean, like everything else Egri's shown us, it's sort of, all comes together at the same time.
In orchestration.
Oh my gosh! Look at what you did! You're so right!
I know.
So, I think that's it. And now that we're actually finished, I'm going to try something.